Hi, my name is Byrd, and I live in Seattle, Washington. I'm a choreographer and the artistic director of Spectrum Dance Theater. Well, I started out as a dancer. I was interested actually in being an actor or a theater director at one point, but I had always danced, and I studied classical music, and the dancing just kept pulling at me, and so I finally gave into the dancing, and I got most of my early training in Boston, where I studied at a little ballet school called the Cambridge School of Ballet, but I also studied contemporary dance there, modern dance. I studied Cunningham technique. I danced with a lot of different people. I freelanced mostly. I studied on scholarship for 2 years at the Ailey School, where they liked me very much, but I was not an Ailey dancer. I mean, I never thought I was an Ailey dancer. And then I went to work with Twyla briefly, and I got let go after a really short amount of time. And that kind of made me rethink why I was doing what I was doing. I thought that, I wanted to dance with somebody like Twyla because I had really low self-esteem. And I thought maybe if I could be close to somebody that was famous and everybody respected, then I would feel better about myself. But after I got fired, I realized I needed to kind of decide things for myself, like what was I about. And so I actually took a dancing position with Gus Solomons Jr., who had been a dancer in the Cunningham Company, and I really enjoyed the work. And that's when I decided that if I'm going to dance with somebody, I'm going to dance with them because I'm interested in what they're doing. It doesn't matter whether they have a big name or not, and I'm here to support what it is, what they're doing. So I started choreographing in California. A couple of years later, I started a dance company there called Byrd and the Group then. And the Group part was a kind of reference to Martha Graham's first dance company, which was called the Group. And so I did that, and then I started to show work in New York, even though I lived in LA. And then I felt like that it was impossible to be serious about concert dance in LA. So I moved back to New York, I should say. I did a big Nutcracker, the Harlem Nutcracker, that toured nationally for 5 years. I did a lot of freelance work on contemporary and classical companies. I worked with Artiboletto in Italy, worked with a new classical company in France that was called Concordance, worked with Pacific Northwest Ballet, worked with San Francisco Opera, worked with New York City Opera. I just did a lot of stuff. And then in 2002, I closed my company in New York and took the position as artistic director here in Seattle at Spectrum. I did choreograph The Color Purple, yeah. I love doing it, actually. I mean, I was always interested in doing stuff on Broadway in the commercial theater, but I didn't think I was suited for everything. Like, I'm not very good at this kind of dancing, so it needed to be something that had a little bit more bite to it, I thought, and the Color Purple, I thought, was a great, when that opportunity came up, I thought it was terrific, the opportunity to try doing that. And it kind of changed my life, because when you work in the not-for-profit, you're not used to royalties, and suddenly you get royalties, you have money, so you go, oh, okay, now I understand how normal people live, so it was good, and it actually caused me to think about how do you balance doing really serious work, concert work, with commercial work. I wasn't interested in trying to find the place where they kind of converge so much, because I didn't want to. I think because one way of thinking will take over, and I wasn't interested in, am not interested in compromising the seriousness of the kind of other kinds of work I do rather than commercial work. So if I'm going to do something commercial, then I want to go completely immerse myself in that world and do that. So The Color Purple one of the things I got from it was that I have the capacity to do that, and it does provide. It's interesting to me, and I want to do more, and I've been doing more of that kind of stuff. I think it's possible to bring some of the sensibility of both into both worlds. But I think you have to be really clear that what you're doing and why you're doing it. One of the things that's interesting about the work that I do here is that for example, is that we have a couple people on our board, one person in particular on our board who used to be on the board at PMB. And so his thinking about things is that you should do programming like PMB that brings everybody in, and that's not really what we do. And so we can do some of that, but if you start doing too much of that, then you start to judge or assess whether you're being successful or not, depending on how many people are sitting in a seat. That's one way of assessing it, but that's not the only way. For me, the most important way is to look at whether is the work communicating what I intend it to, and are the people who are sitting there, are they getting that? And it doesn't matter whether it's 10 people or 10,000 people, but are those people having an experience that's valuable for them? So I think it's possible to make work that is kind of broad-based and is broad-based and has a certain kind of appeal to it, and that's satisfying for people. But that's, after a while, to me, it's always like having a hamburger. I want more than a hamburger sometimes. The hamburger is good and it has some nutritional value, especially if it's made with good meat. But sometimes I want a really good meal that has a lot of variety and in it, depth. I actually took my first dance class at 14, and it was a tap dance class. And then, but I didn't study, kind of like modern dance, ballet dance, kind of stuff until I was 19. I took my first ballet class at 19. I went to Yale and then to Tufts, mostly to Tufts. What I studied was, I studied philosophy and drama. And so I was interested in the theory of the theater, dramatic literature, and one way of kind of exploring the dramatic literature is actually to direct plays and to act in them. I took dance on the side. The physicality of it. I felt like there was something that I could learn from my body that I couldn't learn any other way. The kind of information that the kind of insights and information that I got from my body. But also, I think, the first time I saw the Alvin Ailey Company, well, actually I had two experiences with dance that kind of, I think, started to move me towards dance. Actually, one of them, I was 16 years old, and I saw Edward Villella and Patricia McBride. And they were doing this kind of Lec Dem thing, and they were doing excerpts from Balanchine things. And I thought it was the coolest thing I had ever seen. I couldn't say anything to anybody that I thought it was so cool, but I thought it was so cool. And I remember, he did the Apollo solo, and I just remember the hands doing this thing, behind his back and jumping, and he's doing this whole thing. And I go, wow, that's so cool. And she was kind of doing, and then they did the pas de deux from Ruby's, which I think it was called Capriccio, I think, or what the original title of it was before it became Ruby's. And I just thought it was just so cool. And I knew Stravinsky's music and how this movement, how Balanchine had translated this music into movement, just really intrigued me. And then I went to see the Ailey Company when I was 19. And it was in the spring, and the whole program was amazing. They got to Revelations, and at the end of it, everybody was standing up and screaming, and I was standing up and screaming, and tears were streaming down my face. And I remember thinking, anything that can have this kind of effect on people, that's what I want to do. And that was the moment, I believe, when I actually decided that my life was going to be about dance.